Good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 o'clock, so we're going to make a start with welcome and introductions while everyone signs on. My name is Lisa Carlson. I'm the Chief Executive of Canterbury's Business Improvement District, and I'll be hosting this In Conversation webinar today with Clive Ralph, who's a tax partner at Kreston Reeves and chair of the BID board. Today we're in conversation with office-based and professional services businesses in Canterbury. We're going to be talking with them about issues around staffing, health and safety, transport, any concerns about returning to the office, and any kind of wisdom that this group can offer. So with us today we have Nick Rooke from Finns, we have Jennifer Williamson from Kreston Reeves, we have Reg Groombridge from whosoff.com, Judy Neenan from Girlings Solicitors, and Karl Elliott from Clague Architects. So thank you all for joining us today for this webinar. There is undoubtedly a huge amount that you could share with us in the time that we have, and probably more than the time that we have. So we'll try and just draw out your top tips and the things that you've been thinking about so that we can pass that, we'll share that with the group with us today, but also pass that on to those who are making decisions, including us as a business improvement district, but also Canterbury City Council and Kent County Council, and also at a national level, because this journey to recovery for all of us will be a long one, and it's really important that we're gathering your thoughts, your case studies, and making sure that that is being passed on. You may know that we've been running a series of webinars since lockdown on everything from how the financial climate impacts us to digital marketing, how to produce video content for social media. And this is the third in our In Conversation series, where we've been getting together with different sectors across the city centre. So we've met with retail, large retail, and also independent retail. We have our office-based businesses today, and we have the food and beverage sector next week on Wednesday, the 24th, at the same time, 2 to 3:30 in the afternoon. And all these details can be found on our website. That's canterburybid.co.uk. And if you're not signed up for our e-news, you can do that on the website as well. So you have all this information straight into your inbox. We also have the recordings of all our webinars, including slides if there are any, and you can find all of those on the website. And there's quite a bit more which we'll talk about later on in terms of risk assessments, recovery information, local and national information there to help you. So just before I hand over to Clive to properly introduce our panel, just a few more things from me about how this is going to work over the next hour or so. I imagine that you're all Zoom experts, or that you've been on a platform like this quite a lot over the last few months, but just in case, I'll cover how that's going to work today. So you should see in the bottom of your screen, if you hover your mouse or your finger if you're on a phone, you should see a Q&A and also a chat box. Please feel free as we go along to type your questions in or your thoughts, and I'll be monitoring that. And we'll pause for Q&A at different points throughout the next hour. There's also a chat function. Use that if you're having some technical difficulty, if you can't hear or if you're getting feedback, and let me know and I'll monitor that as well. A couple more things I wanted to do before I hand over, because bear with me, things are moving around the screen. When we normally get together for these sessions, we're in person, and we also normally host a lot of networking events where we get to see you, catch up over a coffee or a glass of wine. We haven't been able to do that, and because in this webinar format we can't all see each other, I'm just going to let you know who all is attending, so for the benefit of our panelists and for all of you as well. So we should have with us today Rachel Bennett from the Cathedral Lodge, Sally Miles from Pittenham Training, Martin West from Burgess Hodgson, Matthew Sutton from Burgess Hodgson, Joe Skelton from Porchlight, Tony Hayden from Fruitworks, James Neve from GenSpec, Steve Solly from Braddon's, Edward Church from Stratton Parker, Tim Mitford Slade from Stratton Parker, Amanda Selman from Burgess Hodgson, David Redgate from Girlings, Joe Rossi from Locate in Kent, Sophie Welsh from Canterbury Cathedral Lodge, and Ian Perrott from London Institute of Banking and Finance. Now, there might have been a few others who signed up, and Rachel might have sent them the link, so you're all very welcome, and also welcome to everyone who's listening to this later on. And I'm just sorry we can't see each other in person. So last thing for me before I hand over, as you know, we, Canterbury City Centre and other towns and city centres around the UK experienced reopening of non-essential retail on Monday. I was out at 7:30 in the morning and saw the queue at Primark, which was wrapped around the corner. They've been able to monitor globally what's happened with the reopening of other Primarks, so they knew what to expect. I think on the one hand, you know, it's an encouraging sign that people are happy to come back in. But of course, what all the businesses have said is they want to make sure that it's safe and welcoming for staff and customers. So we're keeping a close eye on that. But by all accounts, we feel cautiously optimistic about the last few days, but we'll keep monitoring things really closely and talking to businesses to make sure that the queue management is working okay, that customers feel welcome. We did a walkabout with the Lord Mayor and visited a number of businesses, and I've done tours inside Boots and Primark and McDonald's just to get a sense of how it's all working, and have visited a number of independents as well. So we wish everyone all the best for the rest of this week and beyond, and also all of you who are considering whether you've opened up your office already or considering bringing more people back to work. We hope that goes really, really well. So that's enough from me. I will hand over to Clive to introduce our panel.
Great, thanks Lisa, and good afternoon everybody, and thank you again to our panellists for joining and sharing their knowledge with us today. I'm going to ask each of the panellists initially to tell us who they are, where they're from, what their business does, where it's based, what sort of customers they have, that sort of thing. And then we'll go into some questions which will hopefully share some knowledge with all of us. So let's start with the introductions first. Karl, can you start please from Clague?
Sure. Hi, Karl Elliott, Managing Partner, Clague Architects. We're based at 62 Burgate. We've been in Canterbury as a business since 1964, in Kent since 1934, so we've been around a while. Approximately 60 staff are employed by us at the moment, 50 of which are based in our Canterbury office. Our main line of business is obviously, it's in the words of the business, we're architects, architecture. We work on everything from Mr. and Mrs. Smith's single-storey extension up to the largest developments, 3 to 6,000 new homes, new communities. We do schools, offices, commercial, so we do a wide gambit of architectural-based projects. I think that's about it, Clive, really.
That's good. No, it's a very good summation. Thank you very much, Karl. And Karl's also a director of the BID, by the way. Reg, please, can you go next? You're on. Of
course. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Reg Groombridge. I'm co-owner, director of X-Drive Computing. We actually present ourselves as Who's Off because that's what we're known as around the world. We're a small limited company, been established 20 years, started in the porter cabin at Canterbury University, now own our own office space in the Beer Cart building. We have 2 main products, one called Who's Off, one called Who's Office. They manage their business-to-business platform on online delivered service, and companies use them to manage complex shifts, rotas, or just plain basic staff leave. We're very fortunate. We have over 3,000 companies using our services in 65 countries around the world, and in excess of 140,000 users, which also has given us a tiny insight into what's going on in businesses around the world, sickness and employment and things like that.
That's fascinating. So, out of interest, then, how did you end up in Canterbury, Reg?
We like it here. We've always said we could operate our business from the top of the Empire State Building, and in some ways, this experience has only further endorsed that. We can really be anywhere, but it's good that we like Canterbury. We like the scene. We like all the facilities here, and it's good for our staff and good for us.
Good. Thank you very much. Jen.
Afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm Jennifer Williamson. I'm for Reeves Accountants and Financial Advisors. I am a chartered accountant and a partner at Kreston Reeves. We are located in Kent, London and Sussex. Our Kent offices are Canterbury, Chatham and Discovery Park. Firm-wide, we have about 550 people and partners, of which circa 150 are based out of our Canterbury office. Our legacy in Canterbury depends on how far back in our history you go. But my research yesterday tells me we've been here between 120 and 180 years, so quite some time. The businesses we advise dynamic businesses, not-for-profit organisations, individuals and families on all areas of their businesses, tax and wealth. And that's us.
Thank you, Jen. Judy from Girlings, please, can you tell us a bit about yourself and about
Yes,
Girlings?
Hi. Thanks, Clive. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Judy. I'm the HR manager for Girlings Solicitors for my sins. I joined the firm back in 2006, so nearly 14 years. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? I've always worked in HR, or personnel as it was. Before Girlings, I worked in the charity sector for 9 years, which was a very different environment to legal services. Girlings, I think I can beat Karl, opened its first office in Margate in 1881. And over the years, the firm has had many small offices across East Kent. These were gradually closed bit by bit in order to lessen the footprint. And we now operate in 3 prime locations, Canterbury, Ashford and Herne Bay. We have 2 offices actually in Canterbury. One is Rose Lane, which is our main office, but we also have our sister company called Girlings Personal Injury Claims Limited, or known as GPIC, which, as the name suggests, handles PI and medical negligence work. Otherwise, we offer both personal legal services, legal advice, being your traditional residential property, wills, family, matrimonial, so on, and business legal advice, which may well be corporate, commercial, employment, and so on. We have, at last count, 115 personnel. That includes partners working in our 4 offices, and pretty much I'm the only person that deals with HR, so I'm fairly busy. That's me.
Yes, I was imagining your phone must have been red hot these last 3 months.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. Sadly,
we might get onto some of the details shortly.
Yeah,
But no, thank you, Judy, very much.
Right. Okay.
And finally, Nick Rooke from Finns. Nick.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're Finns, largely rural and general practice chartered surveyors, and our Canterbury office is on the corner of Beercart Lane, Beercart Lane, St Margaret Street, and Castle Street, opposite the 3 Tons. I quite enjoy the date of start-up top trumps, because I think we've got 1865, so just about beaten by Reeves and Neenan, as was, I think. In total, we've got 21 members of staff across our 3 offices at Canterbury, Sandwich, and an admin office at St Nicholas and Wade. Largely East Kent focused, acting for farming families, landowners, general property advice, estate agency, letting agency and planning.
Fine, wonderful, thanks Nick, thank you all. So as Lisa explained, over the next 30 minutes or so I'll be discussing with you all your plans to reopen, thoughts on creating a safe working environment, how do you get to the office, parking, things like that, bus services, and security issues. You might have concerns, you might have any blue sky thinking you can share with us all. That would be always most welcome. But prior to that, let's find out a little bit more about what you've been all up to since March, since lockdown day. So let's keep the same sequence going. Karl, let's start with you then. So what's happened since March? Have you had anything open? Have you been totally locked down? And when do you hope to get back to the office sort of properly?
We were, I suppose, slightly naughtily, we didn't have a total lockdown. Our building's of such a size and a nature that we were able to have 6 people in the office throughout. Mainly partners, I hasten to add. We moved to full lockdown 25th of March. And when I say full, that's excluding those partners that still came into the building to pick the mail up and act as general security, really, and make sure the building was maintained as it needs to be maintained. So when I say we went to full lockdown at that point, approximately 50 staff went out to furlough, 50 staff went to home working. That was quite successful. We were actually operational within 24 hours. So we'd actually done a sort of a sanity test on all our systems the week before that happened, because historically people haven't worked from home. We've not embraced working from home. We've stuck to working within the office environment. Now we are gradually coming back into the office. There's 20 of us in the office now. All the social distancing protocols have been put in place, have sanitizers. And during the lockdown period, we took the opportunity to redeck the building, sort out the bathrooms, kitchens and things like that. So we've done some general housekeeping while everybody's been out of the building, but it's in a pretty good state now. So gradually people are being reintroduced. We're hoping another 10 or so in the next week or two will return. Then I'm afraid our building that used to take 50 members of staff will be at capacity with only 30 of us in the building. So 20 will have to remain home working, or we'll have to find other locations for them until the government changes its social distancing requirements.
Yes, perhaps in a moment then you could share with us how you assess the number of 30, whether you got your tape measure. I suppose as architects, you should be particularly good at that, to work out how much space you need each year. But no, thanks for that, Karl. So we'll move to Reg then. So have you been maintaining a skeleton presence in the office, or have you all been at home, Reg, since lockdown?
Since lockdown, all the guys have been at home. We, very similar to Karl, if not identical, we sort of embraced what was going on fairly early on. And one of the things we did, which gave the staff some confidence before lockdown came, was we put gave hand sanitizer to every member of staff and disinfectant wipes. And then also we had a rota where one of us would go out and wipe the steel handrail, because we're on the second floor and people tend not to use the lift. And what I believe that did was made a culture of the office felt a safe place, even though we were all here. And then when it came the moment that they all went to work from home, and we had the same thing as Karl, we did some tests. However, the majority of our staff would sometimes, for various responsibilities, have to connect remotely anyway on a virtual private network and things like that. So it wasn't complete. Believe it or not, what we didn't have was enough laptops, so we could quickly solve that. But what some people don't realise is perhaps you just need a very basic tool, perhaps a Chromebook that's very inexpensive, and you can VPN to your expensive kit on your desk. So there's little bits like that. Whilst the guys have been away, unfortunately we've had to move the pool table into the corner of the office and box it in with some cupboards and respace the desks. So we've gone to the 2 metre distancing minimum, that is. We've also put some tape on the floor. We've done the government risk assessment. We've put the signs up. We've enhanced the hand sanitizer stations. But we're very fortunate. We haven't had to lay anybody off or furlough anybody. And that perhaps we can discuss later about some of the activities of the staff has been, I think the output's been greater.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we'll cover that. That'll be very, very interesting. I sort of assume in your line of work, Reg, that some of the IT challenges and the remote working aspects, probably that's fairly water off your back, isn't it?
Well,
really?
not. You think?
With a bunch of architects or a bunch of accountants, you wouldn't expect them to be IT whizzes, but I'd sort of expect you might be.
No, but the problem is when the guys are disparately spread around Kent in some outlying villages with poor broadband, we get the problems. Like when Jennifer was talking, we had that slight breakup occasionally, and if that gets really bad, then they can't use the VPN breaks down. So we can set the stuff up, but if the demand on the pipe, as it were, on the broadband network is too high from everybody, we get the
Okay.
same problems as everybody else.
So in brief then, you haven't got a super solution for that. For all of us have been on Zoom calls or team calls which have broken up and are just frustrating. You haven't got an answer for us then, Reg?
Not that wouldn't be prohibitively expensive.
Fine.
So.
But do you have an official restart date, or are you sort of you're just business as normal now?
Everybody's at home. We didn't stop at all in any way, shape or form. It's been absolutely full on. We've been actually busier actually in many ways. When you get to the question of coming back to the office, that's a different kettle of fish.
Okay, all right. So no date set in the calendar yet then? No. Fine. Okay, thanks, Reg. Jennifer, how about Kreston Reeves?
So sorry if I was breaking up. I've obviously got little people demanding too much of my broadband in the house. So we closed our offices on the 24th of March, and like everyone else so far, we've worked pretty much entirely remotely since then. We had quite a lot of agile working in the firm before lockdown, so people used to working remotely. It just meant making sure that was 550 people quite quickly, which our IT team did a sterling job making sure that happened really promptly. And yeah, it's been a success. I think a lot of people that might have said to you before all this, really not keen on working from home, it's not for me, have had quite a change in attitude. They have seen some benefits from it and can see this forming part of their longer term work pattern. So yeah, it's been a success. It's been okay. We are going to start trialing office reopenings from the 1st of July. So we have 9 offices. We are going to start by trialling 2 of those, one in Chatham and one in Horsham. They've had risk assessments and all those type of things done, ready to get some skeleton staff in whilst maintaining social distancing. We'll see what lessons we learn from that in the first couple of weeks, and then start looking at opening our other offices. But the message for now really is where people are managing it successfully, and they don't really need to be in an office environment, then to keep risk to a minimum and allow people to continue with that.
So you're not forcing is the wrong word, but you're not forcing people to come back in the office. It's very much as and when they feel safe.
Yeah, I mean, there are some duties that people have found that they can't perform remotely, and the HMRC still sometimes need a wet signature on a bit of paper. So we have had some things that have to have been done via the office, but on the whole, very little. I do accept the points we may come on to later about how this works with collaborative working and as a training organisation, and we will need to start to address that as time goes on. But at the moment, it's been a success, and certainly more of a success than we might have anticipated.
Well, that's great. Well, three happy stories. So it's Judy and Nick. Hopefully, you won't have a different story. So, Judy, how's it been since March in Girlings?
Oh my God, it's been a nightmare. No, I'm joking. I'm joking, actually. No, it hasn't been a nightmare at all. In fact, we started working from home a little bit earlier than that. Not everyone, but because we had some people whose schools had closed, some people who had vulnerable people they were concerned about. So they started working from home fairly early on. We closed the offices properly on the 23rd of March with everyone working from home. And in fact, our IT people, again, sterling effort from our IT guys, they began obtaining additional laptops back in February because we could see the writing on the wall, and configuring those and everything. And then we had people delivering them and going out to homes in order to make sure everyone was kitted up with all the extra things that people would need. If you're working on a dining room table, it's not going to be comfortable. So we sorted them out with an additional kit to help them in that respect. So yes, primarily everyone is working from home. We do have small cohorts of staff who go into each office in order to deal with essential tasks, which simply cannot be completed from home. And some partners go in. But at the moment, of course, it's easy. Although our offices are actually full to capacity, without everyone in and a few people furloughed, it's fine. It's safe, it's comfortable, it's fine. And of course, some of our lawyers are considered key workers, so they are able officially to go in, because sadly the needs of the elderly and the vulnerable, that can't wait. We use Zoom, or we use a form of Zoom. It isn't Zoom actually, we use some other kind of software, name escapes me for the moment, but we do use video conferencing for our meetings, and we're encouraging everybody to video call each other where they can, rather than just phone calls, because there's something very good for the soul in seeing each other. In terms of 9 to 5 working, well, we're not really too worried about that, to be honest. It's outputs that matter to us, and if the job gets done and it gets done in a timely fashion, that's good. And so far it's working very well.
Okay, well, let's come back to, thank you, Judy.
Yeah, sure.
So as an HR person, I expect you know all about furloughing and all the complex rules. And so, as Reg was saying, he hasn't found it necessary to furlough anybody. So how's things I know we have at Kreston Reeves, but let's come to you first. How's furloughing going?
We've got about 20 people furloughed.
Yeah.
20 people furloughed, that's about 17% of the workforce furloughed.
17%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how does one keep in touch with people who aren't working, I mean, are they allowed? They're allowed to log on to their Girlings email account, are they?
Well, we don't let them log on. No.
Oh, you don't let them log on.
But what I did, I approached all of them individually and said, "Are you happy to become a group? And are you happy to share email addresses?" And they all said yes, personal email addresses.
Yeah.
And then I created a furlough email group, distribution group. So periodically I will email the people on furlough leave, and just to share whatever's going on in the firm. I email them regular updates from the government and the latest advice. You know, we've had a few births in the firm, so I announced to them, you know,
birthday cakes. I mean,
baby photographs.
Virtual birthday cakes are a real struggle, aren't they? I haven't cracked that one yet.
Yeah. So yeah, I am keeping in touch with the furloughs as much as I am with everybody else in the business. Yeah.
Okay, good. Nick.
I think I've got all the advantages in going last on this,
because
Karl beat me to it, because I had the same confession to make, that whilst we locked down on around about the 24th or so, and pretty much everyone was then working from home, I came in for the week after and have been in the office ever since, because I can shut myself away, and we've had really a skeleton staff working through the offices, but only those who've chose to have found it more easy to. I think from my personal point of view, it's the only time I've ever found cooking, cleaning and ironing more interesting than what I should be doing to try and raise some fees, but there we go. And we've had a number of people, about, I would say 20% of the workforce, go off on furlough. And Judith's point about keeping in touch then with them is an absolutely excellent one. Everyone wants to know what's going on, and at the end of it, we're all social animals. And we're at work because we need to be there, but most of us also like being there as well, and like the people we work with. So I think that's very important to keep in contact. We're now fully open, apart from one member of staff who's viewed as especially vulnerable, so she's still working from home, but has actually been for a couple of months, probably before the coronavirus outbreak. So everyone's I think adapted to it very well, and still fairly productive. Obviously the market-driven side of things we can't control, but the professional work management rolls on regardless. So we're all very busy. We've really cut the hours we're open, and generally we're doing about 9 till 4 at the moment, and that seems to be working all right. And I think with the phones ringing a bit less and perhaps some less speculative disturbance, we're getting on very well, but all full credit to the team of staff we've got in all our 3 offices.
So I haven't been to your other 2 offices, but in Canterbury, for example, is the front door open, or do you have to make an appointment if I want to come and see you?
No, we've had two speculative knocks on the doors, other people who've rung up saying they're coming to drop in keys, collect keys, or what have you. We have actually got a separate office above and behind the shop front, and we've got enough space in both of those for everyone to spread out, and there'll be sufficient social distancing. trying to get that social distancing in a medieval building in Sandwich is a bit more of a challenge, and I don't think they were obviously quite as hot on it after Black Death as we're having to be now. So,
okay, thank you all for that. So, any hot tips? Hot tips on making your remote workers, making things easier for them, or making them more efficient, or making them more joined up? Anybody got anything they could share that the rest of us could benefit from?
Clive?
Yeah, Karl.
I suppose hot tip, I don't know if it's a hot tip, but it's regular communication. I think we've said it throughout this discussion that staying in touch with your staff via Zoom or Google or whatever the video media is you choose to use has been quite important. It's helped us manage the team quite successfully remotely. It's kept them engaged. Unfortunately, as Judy just said, we sort of forgot our furloughed staff to a certain degree, but we're now re-engaging with them, having literally took the government's rulings to the line.
Yeah.
It was, no, don't know who you are, sorry, can't talk to you. But we've started communicating with them now because obviously they're fed back to us that, you know, they want to know what's going on. So we've started that two-way dialogue again.
Yes. And yes, Reg, you were going to say something. You waving at me, Reg, or just being?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
No, we start the day. We're a small team, you know. It's only sort of 10 of us active in the business. We start the day with a 9 o'clock Zoom meeting every morning, and we're a big open plan office here normally, and we are now communicating better. This is perhaps something against me more than anything. Better now than we did on normal times. I think that morning meeting in a team like that is critical. Obviously, the bigger the scale, it's not necessarily so practical, but you might make pods of people. We're all sort of, the characters come out in it, myself included. So this isn't sort of a you know, directed individual person, but sometimes somebody wants to chat about something at home, or and the temptation is to be overly businesslike. But in this scenario, I would guard against that and just let it run. Okay, you can put a time limit on it. Okay, when we all had free Zoom, it was 40 minutes. I don't think that's wrong. We have purchased an account like most other businesses, but that communication piece and that sort of almost becomes pastoral care to everybody. You can also talk about the problems, and one of our guys went to a shop the other day and somebody was getting too close, and he said to the shopkeeper, "Can't you do something about this?" And he was told that he wasn't the police. But to be able to download that and sort of us all say, "Oh, don't worry about it, calm yourself down, you know, have half an hour off, go up the garden and, you know, whatever, shout into the trees," is great stuff. And the value of the whole Zoom thing, I think everybody's surprised by.
Yeah, Judy, please.
That's a very good point, what you just said there, Reg, about go up the garden. I mean, I have actually been saying to our staff, look, remember, it's very easy to sit down at your desk or at your dining room table, wherever you're working, and then not move your backside for hours. If we were in the office, we would get up, we'd go to the kitchen, we'd make a coffee, we'd get up, we'd go to the printer. We'd maybe have a quick 5-minute chat at the printer or on the way up the stairs to the loo or wherever. We'd have our lunch break. And we're quite strict with that. We do like our staff to take their breaks and, you know, have their breathers to a degree. But you're not going to do that at home. And especially if you live alone and you're working, you're not going to do that. You're not going to have that natural interaction with people. So it's very important to get up, stretch, have a little walk around the house, stroke the dog, take the dog for a walk, nip in the garden, get the hose out at lunchtime or whatever it may be. You'll be just as productive, if not more so. Certainly I can, from my own experience, where my hours are 9:30 to 5:30 normally, I will most often log on at 8:30, and I may not log off again until 7, but in between that time, I'll have cooked a dinner, I'll have nipped in the garden, I'll have done these other things, and I'm just as productive, if not more so, than I am at work or in the office, because I don't have quite so many interruptions. So, and it pays dividends actually at the end of the day, the way you sort of interact with your staff.
One of the catchphrases these days is well-being, isn't it? And we all have
very
to
much
be
so
cognizant of that. And so that's very interesting. Anything you want to add? You don't have to, Jennifer or Nick, otherwise we'll move on.
Well, we have just this week to try and help with this wellbeing aspect and encourage people, as you say, Judy, to stretch their legs. As a firm, we started a Pedometer challenge. So it's something we've done annually anyway, but normally not till September. Well, we've accelerated it. And basically teams, it's all via apps, but teams get together and collectively they have to walk from Land's End to John O'Groats in the space of 4 weeks, logging their steps. There's a huge amount of competition around it. 51 teams have applied this year. And would you believe it? In 2 days, one team has already racked up over 100 kilometres, 4 people. It's nuts, but it's definitely having the effect we wanted out of it. And then I guess something else we've done is really try to engage our people. So we've asked for a lot of feedback throughout this process. We've done a lot of video messaging to try and make sure that what we are telling people and how we're keeping them informed and what they want to see their working environment look like going forward, we are asking them rather than assuming we know. So that's been a good process to go through.
Nick, I guess do your people need encouraging to go for long walks, Nick, or are they all?
I must admit, I'm not doing a lunchtime walk around Canterbury. I haven't done for a bit, but no, I think it shows how important and treasured to us our staff are. Everyone's been working absolutely above and beyond, and the key is productivity, and if it means you're finishing at 4 o'clock rather than twiddling your thumbs in the office for an hour at the end of the day, so be it. But I think everyone has really stepped up to it, and it is, I think, bringing around about a new way of working, a new attitude of working for many.
Thank you, Nick. So Lisa, we'll be moving on to sort of creating a safe working space next, but are there any
yeah, there was just a comment in from Amanda from Burgess Hutchinson, how they've created a staff intranet for all furloughed staff, which is uploaded on a daily basis to keep connected. Same with the all staff one. And they also have virtual social events inviting everyone, which I've noticed on LinkedIn. And it's tempted me to do a sort of maybe a bid quiz with the team and the board. That could be fun. Monthly newsletters and weekly updates from senior partners as well. So it's really interesting to hear how everyone's keeping connected.
Yes, there's a growing sense of online business development, isn't there, with these Zoom breakfasts and Zoom lunches, and your screen is full of 20 or 30 or 40 faces. I haven't quite worked out how to get the best out of them, but there's certainly lots of new thinking. Okay, so we're going to now talk a bit about what you're doing, what you will do to create a safe space in your office for your employees, for those that come back or those that are still there. So I heard you use the coffee word earlier, Judy. I know one of the things on our list that Kreston Reeves is, I think Jennifer will perhaps correct me, but are we planning to close down our coffee areas, Jen? What are we planning to do?
I think there's going to be some strict use about how the kitchens are used and how many people are allowed in at any one time. Tea rounds are a no-no. So yeah, I mean, we're not planning on having very many people in, and building like Canterbury, we've got several kitchens, so we can probably manage it. But I think there will be a lot about bringing in your own mugs, and there's a lot of concern when we did our survey to our people. The biggest concern that came back about returning to an office environment was the use of communal areas. So that goes for anything like the kitchens and the toilets. So yeah, there's going to have to be a lot of thought around how those are going to be managed.
Yes, well, yes, I'm sure. Have you got the answer for us, Judy? Is there going to be a toilet monitor at Girlings, or
more or less? We've got. I've gone into sign frenzy personally.
Oh.
Our facilities manager is knee deep in refurbishing an office for us, so I've kind of taken on the role of queen of the laminator, and I've made lots of signs for all the offices, including one person at a time in the office, knock before entering for the loos, one person in the lift, because our lift is quite small in each building. And we've got social distancing tape, we've got social distancing stickers. I certainly hope the government isn't going to say, oh, it's only 1 metre now, so you can change all your stickers and all your tape, because it's not going to change, I can assure you.
No.
We'll still be saying to people it's
so what's going to happen then if everyone wants to have a cup of coffee at 10:30?
Well, they can't have a coffee at 10:30. It will be one person in the kitchen at a time. Fortunately, our offices are open plan and we can see someone's just gone in the kitchen. And we've got a glazed panel in the door. You can see someone's in there. We've all become terribly, terribly polite, terribly courteous. After you, no, after you. So it's
yeah. Well, Karl, everyone at Clague I've met has always been polite. So I suppose it's no trouble for you, is it? Really? So.
But as Jennifer said, there won't be trays of tea being made for any teams or anything like that.
But so Jen talked about maybe bringing in your own mug. So normally at our office at the end of the day, there might be 15 mugs that end up in the dishwasher, and
we don't have dishwashers, so that's
dishwasher.
You wash your own mug and you keep your own mug on your desk.
So tell us about coffee culture at Clague. There's a lot of C's there. Coffee culture at Clague. Karl.
I think we've done similar to, it sounds like everybody else has done. Basically, our building, as you know, Clive, is cellular by nature. We've got lots of individual rooms. So we've established the 2 metre working rules in all of those rooms. Most of them can take 3 or 4 people in each room. Every room's got its own kettle now. First in the morning, you get your jug of milk, or you bring in your own bottle of milk, and they've all got tea making facilities in the room. So that's the way we've chosen to manage it. So the kitchens are really hardly used at all. Occasional bottle of milk in there, and that's about it.
So I told you, or I suggested 10 minutes ago, I'd ask you about the space, Ben. So I think you mentioned maximum of 30 people you reckon you can accommodate.
We can only accommodate 30.
How did you work that out then?
The power of AutoCAD. No, we were fortunate, obviously, because we use the tools daily. We've got AutoCAD. We've got all our floor plans drawn up in CAD. Simply dropping 2 metre radius circles on each person and see how many we can squeeze into the space. We've actually had to bring out of hibernation an old porter cabin we've got in the garden at Burgate. That was mothballed a few years ago, but we've had to bring that back into life again so we can get people in it to spread people around a bit.
So are you going to be able to hop, if I come in, I'm unlikely to, or someone comes in unexpectedly, can you hop desk in future, or are you just going to keep to your own desk?
No, we're sticking to our own desks. We're not going to hot desk. No. So that's the plan at the moment. So the 30 people coming in will sit at their own desks or a desk designated to them, and that's where they will stay until we're advised otherwise.
And Reg, how about you? I suppose not much has changed really, because you're organised already, aren't you?
Well, when people return, it will be the kitchen area is part of the open plan. I have some perhaps slightly controversial personal views on some of this, in as much as we've all got to be responsible for our own safety. So yes, we should all look after and wash our own cup up and return it to our desk at the end of the day and make our own coffee, etc. But one of my general problems is, not incorrectly, the government has made people frightened and nervous, and that also affects people's and staff's performance and ability to return to the workplace without too much stress and worry, because there is a limit to how frightened we have to have everybody. If, for instance, you go to various shops around the city, I'm currently living in an apartment in the city because I'm waiting on my house. I've visited Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Marks and Spencer's, Waitrose, out of town Marks's. Now, some of them behave differently depending on their clientele. And some of them, it's a bit like going for the Home for the Bewildered. And we're all standing back and being very polite. But all the ladies in Marks and Spencer's lift up the packaged goods and check the date and return them back to the shelf. And I got a little bit irritated the other day. I wouldn't dare say anything to anybody, wouldn't be correct. And I said to my wife, I said, have you seen this? Is this what happens? She said, yes, this is what happens. And so I observed for a minute and found that, of course, about 6 people in the time I were there touched the same item. That item would eventually get purchased, go to the checkout, and the checkout lady would obviously put it through the till, wearing her gloves, but she doesn't change gloves in between. So I think if everybody looks after their own cup and washes it up and there's no cup sharing, I think touching the odd something kettle, isn't the end of the world, because as we go about our daily business shopping, You know, there is some contact there, but we must be safe, but let's not frighten everybody to death and be part of that. So there's a balance.
Nice thought. So Judy, then, where are you? There you are, in the middle. You keep moving around. It's like, anyway.
Yes, we've moved, haven't we?
What was that quiz on television, Celebrity Squares or something? But anyway, Judy, so as an HR manager, I don't fancy your job very much. So any angst and issues or fallings out, not that it would happen to Girlings, of course, but you know, it's going to end up on your doorstep. I mean, are you primed for some employees or employees of some of your clients perhaps finding issue which you'll have to mediate and sort out?
We haven't had anything so far. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we haven't. I think we had one of our support members of staff was a little reluctant to come in when we needed her to, because there was something that had to be dealt with. And she was a little reluctant, but when we were able to explain to her what measures we'd put in place already, it was fine. And as Reg rightly said, it's about common sense, actually. You know, being sensible and thinking through your actions. You know, as Reg said, if you wear gloves and you touch everything, you're actually contaminating everything. Rather than ditch the gloves, wash your hands frequently and sanitizer. And it'll be fine. So yeah, no, I'm sorry to maybe disappoint you, but we haven't had anything that's emotive, really.
Well, let's talk about PPE for a second then. Is there going to be some Girlings face masks or visors?
Well, we already buy and have stocks of nitrile gloves, non-latex gloves, because
what are they then? What's a nitrile?
Their nitrile is just, I don't know, it's another form of, it's not latex, but it's another form of rubber.
Some people are allergic to latex.
Can be yes,
okay,
that's
thank
it.
You. Right.
So we use those to change the printer cartridges. So we always have a supply of those anyway, and we've just bought more. We have actually got a very small supply of paper disposable face masks, just should anybody want to wear one in the office. It's their call. You can't make them do it. We've got sanitizer. We are dripping in sanitizer from the receptions, the toilets, the kitchens, the desks, dotted around everywhere. We've got plenty of it. And we even bought aqueous cream, and we put those in the loos because people were finding their hands were getting sore. Okay. So the aqueous cream sorted that problem out. You've got to be careful though. You've got to put the cream on before you sanitize. Otherwise you've washed off the sanitizer with the cream.
So Lisa, wasn't one of our levy payers, weren't they generating hand sanitizers? Was it the brewery?
Yep, so the Canterbury brewers at the Foundry Brew Pub, right next to Fruitworks on Stour Street, they have switched from, well, not entirely switched from distilling gin and whiskey. Thankfully, that's still going on, but also producing hand sanitizer. So we've got some for our office, and he started out doing that just on a voluntary basis to help those who absolutely needed it in the beginning, but is continuing to supply that locally.
Good.
It's not gin flavoured, is it, Lisa? Because if it were, people would
not.
I don't think it's supposed to drink it. But so sanitizer, is that in your job spec, Nick, to sort out sanitizers, or is that one of your colleagues?
No, we're I think quite lucky in only having 6 people in the office, so we've had enough space for everyone to be able to work around and look after themselves. And I think Reg made the point very well. We all employ intelligent people who can exercise common sense and judgment, and I think it's, we have got to give house room to that. So we haven't started marking the floors out and things like that. I think when we may start seeing some more members of the public wanting to come into the office, we'll probably have to do some sort of boxing at the front, asking people not to cross the line, removing chairs and things like that. It's removing the incentive to go outside of where they should be, I think. And Lisa's point on the Foundry Brew Pub, that was very, very good of them to start producing the sanitizer, which they donated a large amount of it to the Eastbridge Hospital and Arms Houses, of which I'm a trustee. So thank you very much.
Very good. So Jennifer then, so Nick was saying at Finn's, if you want to pop in and look at a dwelling, you can get in the front door, whereas I guess Kreston Reeves, when sort of we're open for business properly, if you know what I mean, will the front door be locked, or can people pop in spontaneously, or how's that going to work?
I mean, in the first instance, with our trial office openings on the 1st of July, I think the front doors will remain closed. Like our people we employ, our clients have been remarkably adaptable as well. They've had to be, and video conferencing is the new norm. And I think there are some benefits for the business from that, and there are also some benefits for our clients. So we're not looking to retrench on some of those benefits we're seeing. Obviously, we will need to open the doors to clients in due course, and we already have work that we have to undertake on site, you know, some stock takes, some audits, some reviewing of client files that aren't in the cloud. So we are having to look at PPE and how we manage that with our clients to protect our people, to make sure we can do on-site work. So
that's interesting then. I mean, this would apply obviously to Karl, it applied to everybody here then. So one of your colleagues is going out to a client, let's say, to do a stock take. So what, somebody phones up the client saying, do you want me to wear a face mask? Or, I mean, how's that work in practice?
So we've done some remotely using video technology, but there are other bits and pieces that we have to go on site. There are sometimes non-cloud based working papers that we have to use. We are in the first instance making sure our clients are providing an environment that we feel is appropriate for our people to work in. You know, we're not going to put anybody at risk, that, you know, in a position where we wouldn't be willing to go into that environment, and then providing our people with PPE on site to use sensibly if they feel it's appropriate. But, you know, clients have been really accommodating. You know, I've got some that saying we've completely held a room for you. You'll have your own entrance and your own access to get out. No one else will be in that room. It will be deep cleaned at the end of every day. So we're finding ways around it. Everyone's adapting.
Fine. So it's surprising how far we've come in the space of a few months. So let's go back 12 months. Well, let's go forward 12 months, quickly round the metaphorical table to get some sense of returning to the office. So in 12 months' time, do you foresee 100% of your people being back in the office like they were 12 months ago, or 70%, or Karl, top of the head answer? What percentage of your people in a year's time are going to be sitting behind their desks as they were a year ago?
I am thinking all of those that are going to return will be back by then. So I'd say we'd have 50 people-ish back in 62 Burgate, yeah.
Yeah, so sort of back to the new normal, or the old normal, or back to something.
Somewhere between the two.
Yeah. How about you? Yeah, Reg? Well, probably your answer is the same as it was. It's how many people are going to? You got some of your colleagues who are going to be working from home forever now. Do you think?
There is a. I'll be frank and honest. I think there's a danger of that, but I would prefer we all got back to the office eventually. But we're not. None of us are in control of what's going to happen next. But that's what I wish for, that we all end up back in the office, even if it's in a year's time. That would be the best thing. Because as one of the things I'll quickly add is, some of this is all still very new to us. And whilst we're all following the rules, you know, in 6 months' time, 9 months' time, will Zoom and our outlook on that and having the Zoom calls be valued in the same way, especially if half the people are back in the office and half aren't. So there's, you know, the changes in this adaptability of everybody and the way people think. Because we run businesses, we're obliged to look to the future and make a best guess. I think that's part of running a business, but it doesn't mean we're going to get it right. So we're going to have this adaptable journey again.
So Jennifer, a year's time, do you think all the Kreston people are going to be behind their desks as they were 12 months ago?
Not based on our initial feedback we've had. Most of our people have asked to work agilely going forward, and the preference they expressed was 3 days at home, 2 days in the office. That won't be the same for everyone, and clearly there are some jobs that have to be far more office based, you know, front of house and things like that. But I think we're quite keen to harness that. I think we do have these challenges of being a training firm and the collaborative working that we will need to make work in that agile environment. And I do expect this initial enthusiasm to wane somewhat, a bit like Reg has just said. I think there's lots of reasons why it benefits people at the moment. Some of them, you know, there's home commitments that make it very difficult to be in an office environment. But I think there are challenges with home working as well that people will start to think, well, if the office is open, maybe I will use it more frequently. Suboptimal workspaces is one. You know, people are coping in cramped bedrooms with, we normally work in the office with 2 screens, with 1 screen, you know. So I think there will be more of it than we ever used to do, but I think the initial enthusiasm will wane slightly.
So with your HR hat on, Judy, do you foresee your colleagues dealing with claims for personal injury because employees have been working in I like that phrase, Jennifer, employees have been working in suboptimal workspaces and maybe they've damaged their back, or I mean, presumably the employer has a responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I think according to HSE, you don't have to ask people to do a health and safety risk assessment unless you're working at home for a long period of time, but they're quite vague as to what that means. So rather than risk it, and just because we wanted to make sure people were safe and comfortable, we sent them all a home working questionnaire straight away and said to them, look, we want to know how comfortable you are. And we want to know if we need to help you in any way. So they did that straight off. But very similar to what Jennifer was just saying, I think in the long term, there will be people who prefer to work in the office because they are working in uncomfortable conditions at the moment. It's not ideal. And yet there are other people who have got the luxury of a lovely cabin down the end of their garden in which they can work. So it will very much depend who you speak to. But I think this whole thing will sort some good employers from bad employers in terms of how well they've looked after their staff throughout, and whether they've confronted the issues and helped them through them, or whether they've just ignored it and said, you've just got to come up with the business, you've just got to come up with the work. So I think there will be some claims, yeah.
Going back to my office question then, is your front door at Girlings, is that going to be open in future, or do you have to make an appointment to come into your place?
Well, when this all first started, when we were worried about where people had arrived back into the country from, whether they'd been to Italy recently or wherever, Wuhan, we were using a client questionnaire before making any appointments for anybody. And that rapidly changed, and then we withdrew the questionnaire altogether and closed the office doors. In terms of reopening them again, well, yes, of course, we hope to reopen them again to clients, but we'll obviously have to go back to the business of making sure we don't have too many clients in reception waiting at any one time. So we'll have to be very careful that we only book so many appointments. You know, we book our appointments centrally, if you see what I mean.
A bit like your coffee area, then you can't all come and see Girlings.
Well, we don't. Our offices are lovely, but they are full to capacity. So we don't have the luxury of excess space where we could just move that desk to there, or we don't have a massive reception area, so we couldn't possibly have 6 or 7 clients all arriving at the same time. We're going to have to be very cautious in that respect. But yes, we'd like to open our office, and it may well mean that we have staff working very flexible hours. Maybe a client wants an appointment at 7 o'clock at night, and one of our fee earners will come in order to accommodate that.
Yeah.
Or a Saturday.
So Nick, then, my first question was, in 12 months' time, are you all going to have the same people working in the same way as they were in 12 months ago? You know what I mean?
I think broadly, yes. I think what this has taught us, and taught us very quickly, is that we can be a lot more flexible about how people work. And now I might have on occasion in the past gone home to work on a single job because you can put your head down and concentrate on it, get it done a lot quicker. I'd now be more relaxed about working at home for a day a week if I wanted. I like coming into the office environment, so I'll probably continue with that for the moment. But as I said, it's been a very, very steep learning curve for everyone, and I think also quite a personally rewarding one for a lot of people as well. So,
Yeah, I wonder whether it would have been quite as nice had it been in the middle of winter. I mean, because the weather's been pretty kind, hasn't it, really, to be honest? Had it been cold and wet every day. But anyway, that's irrelevant. Okay, so we're going to move towards our final questions in a few moments, but is there anything anybody wants to add on the sort of safe working space agenda? Anybody got any, you got concerns, Judy, with your HR hat on, or do you think everyone's, say, is the innate sensibilities of us all will carry us through?
I don't think you can assume everyone has got innate common sense. So I think you need to sort of err on the cautious side. But you know, on the whole, yes, I think we've got a long run at this, haven't we, really? We've had some practice now in terms of what it takes. So
I was talking, sorry interrupting you, I was talking to Lisa, we were talking this morning, weren't we? And you said with some of the retailers, what were you telling me? Some health and safety people came in and did an inspection, or what were you saying this morning, Lisa?
Well, there are a couple of things we were talking about. One is, you know, everyone's had to learn and adapt. So we did our first ever conversation webinar with retailers who had stayed open. So Boots, Marks and Spencer, also talked to the Whitefriars Centre management team. And if you've been into Marks and Spencer in Canterbury, you'll know that they've changed their entry and exit points 3 times during lockdown and have changed the way people flow through. So I think, Judy, I think that's absolutely right. We all kind of want to do the right thing, but we don't necessarily know how unless it's really explicit. So I think there's a really interesting point there for all of us, no matter what kind of sector we're in. But then across the city, it's, you know, the guidelines from government are coming thick and fast, and then there are updates every other day. You know, it's really hard. We had that recently, you know, with furlough and on maternity leave, and how do you deal with that? And but what we're seeing across the city is businesses, food and beverage, who can be open for takeaway, and they might have a piece of furniture outside on which they place, like a table, which they place hand sanitizer or a sign or a plant just to look nice and be helpful. But what they can't do is put out tables and chairs for people to sit on. So it's, you know, it's just a confusing time, and everyone wants to do the right thing, whether that's out on the street in front of your building or what we all do inside. So I think the key message through all of these webinars we've been doing and all the conversations we've had with businesses is, you know, listen to your staff. They're observing everything and can tell you, and listen to the feedback from customers, and we have to all be flexible and adaptable.
Yeah, no, that sounds very wise. Okay, well, if there's no other points on the safety and those aspects, let's just move on towards the final topic, although nothing's off limits. But I wanted to talk a little bit about accessing your office. Who was it? Reg, you mentioned about parking, didn't you? Or you can't park, or you can park. Who was talking about parking?
Yeah, I mentioned parking. I mean, we're fortunate. We've got, you know, we're right in the centre of Canterbury. We've got 5 spaces.
Right.
We've had to have the barrier up, and it's very irritating when people park in those spaces, but that's the nature of it. But we also have some guys we buy parking permits for.
From the council?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would hope that they can be accommodated, but I'm sure we get round it, you know. But the point is, it's about scale, isn't it? You know, we have 10 staff. You know, if we had the numbers of staff you guys have got in a central location, you know, it's a different problem. We're sort of not completely atypical in some of the problems, and we've got some luxuries of space and parking spaces. But nevertheless, you know, it's a problem we have to work around if it crops up.
Yeah. So on parking, Lisa, then I was saying earlier, the park and ride is sort of now open again to park in, but you can't ride. But you can bike in from there. And what's the deal about the city centre car parking? The council announced something, didn't they, the other day?
So they are opening up more car parks. St Radigan's is still closed, and a few others. They can adjust that though, depending on demand. So if you do have a concern, feed it through, because I go straight through to the head of transportation to give them all your feedback. But they have announced a reduced prices and a cap on the prices because Park and Ride is closed, to enable people who need to work to be able to come in that way. I mean, it's a funny old world we're in, and KCC are working through the active transport funding, but government saying on the one hand, don't ride public transport, drive. On the other hand, walk and cycle where you can. So all of that is still being worked out, and we don't have enough of the infrastructure we need to enable all that walking and cycling. But what we do have for the moment, we've got reduced car parking charges in the city centre. And Clive, I think we were going to talk in a minute, or we can do it now, about the guidelines we put together with the council. They're in digital format on our website and the council's website, and so if you're looking for information about park and ride and car parking, you can find it there, and it will be updated as often as it needs.
There's something else. I've got a prop here. I can wave something. Yeah, you'll find that, for example, on the BID website, some very useful resource on the BID website, including some risk assessments, aren't there, Lisa, for various industries, including what we might call office-based people. So well worth looking at the Canterbury BID website for accessing that. Did I see a question flash somewhere in front of my eyes, Lisa?
No, we have. Yep, so there is one here from Martin West. If the panel have furloughed staff, do they see themselves completely unfurloughing remaining staff post-July? Or will they look to bring some back in a part-time capacity? And if so, how do they see managing that alongside staff that have been working throughout?
That's a really good, well, there's lots of questions there, some really good ones there. In fact, I was talking to our HR guy yesterday about that, but let's point that at Jennifer at Kreston Reeves. So come 1st July, Jen, you can part furlough people, can't you? So you can bring people back for a day a week, and then you split the cost of the 80% between the government and the employer. So yeah. We yet know what Kreston Reeves' take on that's going to be?
Well, I think for us, simplicity is key. So obviously, we have to meet client needs. That has to be top. So if people are on furlough and we need them to return back to deliver client priorities, then that's on a case-by-case basis. But other than that, we're not looking to overcomplicate matters with some hybrid arrangement. I think people are on furlough or off furlough, and we'll probably look to try and draw our furlough to an end as soon as we can, really.
Okay, so not a question for you, Reg, because you're not into furloughing. Karl, do you think you might have someone on furlough full time at the moment you want to bring back 2 days a week from the 1st July, or have you not thought about it yet?
No, it's a bit like Jennifer, really. We're looking at workload, workflow, and we're going to start reintroducing people as and when we need them. We do perceive that is going to be an inevitability shortly. To put a date to it, I couldn't at the moment, but yeah, it's something we're thinking about.
I guess it's sort of partly answering Martin's second or third question, whichever one it was. I get people, accountants, for example, and lawyers, we have the burden or the blessing of timesheets. So I guess we have a relatively easy way to keep track of what people are doing. But we hear what Jen said about trying to keep it simple. Nick, are you going to keep? Is it all or nothing at Fins in terms of?
I think we're much a fairly lightly staffed business anyway, so the sooner we can get everyone back, the better. But again, workflows have got to dictate that, and it may be that some of those who've been on furlough realise they actually prefer to be working a little or part-time, or not absolutely full hours. So it'll be interesting to see that when it happens. I heard a wonderful phrase a few weeks ago, which seems to sum up a lot of my working day, of mistaking activity for achievement. And I think that's something really to bear in mind, that we've got to know those things for people to do, because there's going to be nothing worse than probably having got bored on furlough, coming back to the office and getting bored.
Yeah, indeed. And Judy, I keep referring to your HR hat, but do you think there are particular dangers or opportunities? Because in pure furlough, you're not allowed to do anything. But as from 1st July, you can have some of this and some of that, can't you?
Yeah, I think for us, it will be very much a case-by-case basis, because of course some of the people that we have furloughed have they are vulnerable themselves, or they maybe have vulnerable people in their household, so they wouldn't feel comfortable coming back. They have children, and now of course we know that not all the schools are opening. So there are those difficulties that would be presented to us if we tried to bring them back. They might be able to come back part-time if they've got a partner who is also furloughed. So I think it'd be very difficult to just take a broad brush approach. We will need to speak to individuals really, and bear in mind business needs.
So Lisa, you mentioned bikes, didn't you? We want to talk about bikes for a bit. Is there a shortage of bike racks in Canterbury, do you think?
Yeah, there's a shortage of cycling infrastructure, full stop. And we've been looking through the ERDF funding and different forms of funding that's on offer. At the moment, none of it in terms of the reopening and recovery can go on capital expenditure. So we're looking at options for, you know, everything from whether there's different sources of funding to, I don't know, can we rent it, or things that we can put in temporarily that would help. But as I said, KCC are going through the process of working with the district councils right now on the active transport funding from government. So that's yet another source of funding, and I really do hope that this is the moment in time when we can see something different that will change our transport infrastructure for the better.
But I mean, locally, the bottom line is the council are looking at a humongous deficit, aren't they, this year? Because all their parking income has disappeared and some of the rents from their investments have disappeared. So they haven't got much cash to splash, have they?
Yeah, and when you look at the sectors that are hardest hit, there's still a lot of analysis to do, of course, but retail, hospitality and leisure, higher education and local government will come out at the top of that list. Yeah,
so we round this table then, we're the lucky ones. That's what you're saying. I mean, there's a league table, wasn't there?
I put it that way.
Oh, yeah, but it's all comparative. Was it what was the league table say, that in Canterbury, was it higher education would potentially be the hardest hit sector, or was it food and beverage, or someone did some numbers?
It'll be the three, yeah: tourism, hospitality, leisure, higher education, and local authority will be the hardest hit. And of course, that higher education, tourism element impacts other sectors so much as well.
So as usual, there's not much sympathy for the office-based workers.
Well, pleased to see that coming back to the office, and especially where you see it in a year's time. So keep, you know, shopping.
Well, I'm a bit worried about these people who are only going to come back 2 or 3 days a week. What about those poor people running sandwich bars? I mean, that's, you know, it's too fewer sandwiches a week that's going to be purchased.
We're certainly going to have to adapt, but I do think Canterbury is going to be okay. It's interesting to see the level of investment that's still coming into the city. You know, new businesses opening up, lots of refurbishments, sites going to planning. So it's, yeah, we're going to adapt and change for sure, but I think it's an interesting time as well.
Okay, is there anything else? Were you waving at me 5 minutes ago, Reg? Did you want to talk about bikes or not?
It was the comment prior to that about people on furlough and one thing or another. We again have an insight with one of the products that we deliver around the world that manages shift and people's time off. And fortunately, it's sophisticated enough to allow people to add working from home and then furlough as a leave type. And then we had a question about what happens if somebody's in the middle of furlough and then they're on holiday, and how do you track all of this? And of course, as Jennifer pointed out, you know, who wants, basically, she didn't say, this isn't Jennifer's words, she doesn't want all that trouble. You've got to keep it simple for all sorts of reasons, because the admin, but there are tools out there like ours that sort of help people in this situation, and that has been a bit of a saviour for us. We've had some sort of really big companies come to us with hundreds or thousands of users saying, you know, how do we manage this? We understand you can help us with that. The downside of that is also we've got the numbers about how many businesses have closed out with us. Yeah. That sort of represents a percentage, and it's clear that the smaller businesses have been harder hit at the moment. But I think we also have to, perhaps there's a piece for those in office-based business and business in general, is to understand that the tail of this is going to be very long, and it might thicken in a bad way initially as we try to bring everybody back to work. Okay, we're can call ourselves fortunate, or the sectors we work in aren't being so badly affected. But when some of these companies try to bring quite large numbers of people back to work, the jobs won't be there. And that will inevitably filter down, I don't want to sound crass, even to us. You know, there will be an effect to all of us,
yeah,
ultimately. And I think it might broaden out a little in the coming weeks and months as the effect filters through. And that okay, it's not a very positive comment, because we've had very positive comments here today, but that's also what we've got to all be prepared for down the line, I think.
Well, I suppose the last few weeks it's been British Airways have had all the bad PR, haven't they? They've been lambasted from pillar to post about how could they sack all these employees. But the stats I read, and you can believe what you read, was that potentially 20% of all SMEs. There's about 5.7 million SMEs in the UK apparently, and someone predicts that 20% of them are going to close. You think, my God, I mean, that's over 1 million businesses, and we haven't. Well, personally, I haven't seen much of that. I mean, we know
we've seen 10% go. 10% of companies have closed their accounts. It doesn't mean they've closed, but there's a strong possibility.
10% gone already, do you? You think, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of our.
Oh, right.
Which is a very broad cross sector across all businesses.
Yeah. So in terms of the levy payers, Lisa, we know that Canterbury Tales aren't going to reopen, don't we?
Yeah, we've had very few SMEs, but I think it's early days because they're just heading towards reopening. So I think it's too early to say. But yeah, Canterbury Tales isn't coming back. I think that was perhaps a pre-lockdown that was in motion. But you know, we've heard of some who aren't going to come back in the same way. So Pork & Co have said they're only going to do takeaway, but let's watch this space and see what transpires. I think what we're seeing more of at the moment are the national chains who aren't coming back, or who are going into administration or similar. And you know, that could change as well. But we're seeing more of that right now at this stage. I think we have to, absolutely right, we have to be realistic about this long road that we're going to be on. I think the next thing that will come are redundancies. So just referring to BA, there'll be others like that, and that will impact everybody. So, you know, on the one hand, I think we have to be realistic about all of this, but on the other hand, look for where the positive signs are and what we could adapt and how we could transform. And there's certainly still a lot of interest in Canterbury. You know, I even wonder, are we going to attract people who don't want to live in London anymore, attract them to Kent? So these are ways that we're going to have to adapt and change.
Yeah, well, I must admit, from where I've been sitting, I've found this afternoon a largely wholly positive exercise. There's some really strong stories and determination to work through all this. So we're getting close to the close, and certainly not at all bothered about finishing early. So any questions from anybody who want to share their silver bullet as to how it's all gone well, or any concerns, any observations from any of our panelists, things you lie awake at nights worrying about?
Or from any attendees who just want to share some more thoughts. That's been really helpful to hear from Martin and Amanda. Clive, just while we wait just a few minutes, I will attempt to share my screen with probably too many tabs open. No, that should work. Can you panelists see that? Okay, then everyone should be. So this is just the bid website, and I just wanted to point out a few things here. We rely a lot on people telling us what's going on and what they're up to, and also be helpful to hear from your staff and what you observe and your staff observe as you come into the city, and we can make updates and feedback accordingly. But the section that Clive was referring to, a couple of things. We are working with the Institute of Place Management and the Bid Foundation on a recovery framework, a 4-stage recovery framework that many other towns and cities are using. I won't dwell on this. I'm hoping that we've got some questions and comments coming in, but I'll just show it to you for now. and how we've adapted it for Canterbury in line with our business plan, which is what you as levy payers have voted on, and that's what we still have to deliver, albeit some details will of course have to be adapted and changed. But this was the document that Clive showed you that we've developed with the council that has information for all sectors. Of course, the links to national government, but details, local details about street cleaning, transport, environmental health, security, and that will be updated, particularly the car parks, park and ride. Toilets, I've never had so many conversations about toilets, but it's very normal for place management conversations. Here are the risk assessments. These are the floral, social distancing, welcoming stickers that are going up on pavements around the city today, and you're all welcome to have them for outside your offices. They're not meant to really enforce or be prescriptive, but to be friendly and welcoming. So that's all on the BID website, as are all the links to city centre performance. So if you're looking for any data about the city, it will be there, and we've continued to monitor that throughout lockdown. And then if you're looking for any of the training information, webinars, there you all are. It'll all be on the website there.
So as you said earlier, Lisa, we've got a couple more. Well, we've got at least one more of these, haven't we? We've got food and beverage next week. And I'm very sorry for panelists and those participating remotely. I'm sorry that we can't all embrace you with a nice drink and a bit of physical networking like we have for the last few years. Our networking events are fabulous, but we just can't do that. I'm sorry, but hopefully it won't be too long that we can come back and thank you for participating. In the meantime, we just carry on, don't we, Lisa? Anything else? Anything else about bid news you want to share? We had our AGM, didn't we, last week? We got our accounts passed.
Board elections had to be postponed because it wasn't fair. We wouldn't be able to vote really, but we will be holding board elections in September.
For any levy payers who fancy being a board member, please consider that. It's entirely unpaid, but nevertheless it's good fun. Got some very good board members on board and looking for a refresh. We'll probably go into elections pre-Christmas, won't it, Lisa? We haven't fixed dates yet, but pre-Christmas. Yeah,
look out for the communication on that. As soon as we feel we can enable you to participate in the best way, we'll make that happen.
Some of our usual things have gone. So Pride was lost, obviously. The Medieval Festival was lost. What else we lost?
Wine Festival, all the big events. A couple of things on that. We may see some smaller events come back into the city, which would be a good way for us to trial it in terms of consumer confidence and what's doable, what's safe. But also we are vinyling vacant units. So we've put up the first 2 vinyls on the former Debenhams building, the Guildhall Quarter site, with a lovely map of the city and a lovely image of the city pointing towards the King's Mile. And we're looking at doing more of that around the city centre. And beautiful images of what would have been, so Pride and the medieval pageants and the wine festival, just to remind us all about what our city is capable of. And I hope that next summer is a do-over of what this summer couldn't be. But I think it could be a nice way of reminding everyone about what Canterbury has to offer.
Yeah, that's a great note to finish on. So any last observations from anybody, Lisa, or are we going to finish 7 minutes early, which quite appeals to me?
I think we're going to finish a bit early.
Fantastic. Well, thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Karl. Thank you, Reg. Thank you, Judy, Nick and Jen. Fantastic, really valuable insight from all of you. And thank you for those who were listened in. And we've got another event next week, as Lisa mentioned. And if any had any feedback, any comments, you can find Lisa easily enough through our website. So we're going to close, aren't we, Lisa?
Yeah.
Fine.
Thanks, everyone. Lovely to see you.
Bye.
Clive, thank you, Lisa.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.